Hello, this is Game Critic with my first episode of Metagame Framework, a series about the different design aspects of video games that, when executed well, makes for truly great experiences. This episode is about mechanics. Mechanics are the most important part of video games, because without them, it wouldn't really be a game at all. They are often referred to in many game review articles, with certain reviewers lauding some mechanics as innovative and amazing, with others being criticised for their lack of imagination or clunkiness. But what really is a good mechanic, and how do they affect gameplay? Miguel Sacart, a computer game researcher, defined game mechanics as methods invoked by agents designed for interaction with the game state. Now, that's a hell of a mouthful, so let's break it down. An agent in this case would be the player or an AI character, and a method would be any action that an agent can take that can interact with the game, potentially bringing the player closer to failure or success. Mechanics can be wildly different from one another, but are all used by the player in an attempt to complete the tasks laid before them, to bring them closer to the next stage. In Game Mechanics Advanced Game Design, Ernest Adams and Joris Dormans described as many as 5 distinct types of mechanics: physics, internal economy, progression mechanisms, tactical maneuvering, and social interaction. All these forms of mechanics have extremely varied degrees of complexity, ranging from things that we barely even notice, such as general movement, or some that are extremely complicated, like the complex movement in Mirror's Edge, in which the main character Faith can build up speed to cover large distances with her jump, perform rolls to mitigate fall damage, slide along the floor, run up walls, run along walls, bounce off of them in the opposite direction, and tuck her legs upwards, allowing her to clear tall obstacles. This is a good example of physics mechanics. Internal economy mechanics can refer to currency used in games, but also the various items found in the game, such as the tasty sweet roll in the Elder Scrolls Skyrim, or the finite loot in the Long Dark, where many items, including those that are man-made, do not respawn, and you are forced to try and survive on your dwindling resources for as long as possible. A key found in a dungeon used to advance to the next level can be described as a progression mechanic, but far more complicated examples are found in games like Portal, where through the use of physics, a portal gun, and a go-getting attitude, you can propel yourself over seemingly impossible gaps, link up lasers with their respective receivers, or pass through a room full of enemies unharmed, all to reach a door that takes you to the next level. Tactical maneuvering in many games takes the form of using the way that other mechanics interact with one another, or dynamics, to your advantage in a game, be it as simple as gaining the upper hand in a gunfight in an FPS game because of your current weapon and character choice, or as involved as executing a well-timed and stealthy tactical pincer move in a real-time strategy game. And finally, social interaction mechanics. These occur in games such as Rust, where you can talk, build, and survive with other players, but can take on entirely different meaning in games such as EVE Online, where the player starts off alone but can create and join corporations, which in turn can lead to wars over who is the king of the galaxy. The more complicated examples of each of these mechanics are the product of the developer adding depth to their mechanics. Depth is a very important consideration when creating mechanics. Often it is far too tempting to have a plethora of mechanics to create an experience that is very broad, but often depth is the far more important factor in deciding the quality of a mechanic's gameplay. Mike Stout, developer for the Ratchet & Clank games, noted that a mechanic needs clear objectives so the player knows what he has to do to succeed. Confusion and obfuscation tend to make players feel like a mechanic is less deep once they find themselves needing to experiment randomly to win. And needs a variety of meaningful skills that you, as a game designer, can use to create good challenges for the player, and that the player in turn can use to achieve mastery over the game. Depth can be a pitfall for developers as well, as putting too much emphasis on the incorrect part of the experience can have disastrous effects for the way the game plays, as Nels Anderson, lead designer for Mark of the Ninja, stated in an interview that players would try to play like Rambo during playtests, as a result of the combat mechanics being far too deep. When talking about making characters realization dependent, Clint Hocking, lead designer for Far Cry 2, said, "We could have made a surgery minigame when you tried to save the life of a wounded buddy, but it would have been focusing on the wrong thing. The gameplay that occurs when a buddy is wounded should not be based on reflex skill, but rather on the challenge of making a difficult moral decision with far-reaching repercussions. What mattered was not iterating the low-level mechanics until they were fun, but achieving a high enough level of realization that the player would be emotionally invested, and would find the decision to euthanize or abandon his wounded friend more challenging than any test of reflexes." In this way, mechanics can also be used to reinforce the theme of a game, and influence the way players act in it, such as in Doom 2016, in which health is gained by chasing enemies and performing gruesome takedowns on them. This is a huge change from the standard way games get you to respond after having taken damage, usually insisting that the player get to cover. But in Doom 2016, players are encouraged to feel like the hunter and stalk their prey, instead of hiding behind a sturdy piece of furniture. Similarly, in Darkest Dungeon, players are forced to adopt the persona of a cold-hearted and careless leader, who orders his men to their doom in the monstrosity-filled dungeons of the once opulent and imperial family's mansion. Characters that you hire experience mental trauma when sent into the dungeons, but although there are many ways to counteract the effects of the trauma, they cost a lot of money, and you will inevitably find yourself, while short on cash, hiring the characters and sending them in with little provisions, and dismissing them when they come too close to breaking point. So, mechanics teach us, change us, and are often used to portray story or theme to us. Good mechanics design is essential to gameplay and can make or break a game if it's clunky or poorly conceived. With a better understanding of what exactly is a mechanic, I hope you can all contribute to the discourse about what kind of mechanics make a truly amazing game. My personal favourite game mechanic from the recent games I've been playing is from the puzzle games We Were Here and We Were Here Too. Two players are placed in a separate room and have to use walkie-talkies to talk to each other, and it makes the situation so much tenser, as you have to try and figure out the puzzles at the same time as talking over each other when the game gets a bit too tense. If you have a favourite mechanic, type it in the comments. I'd love to hear some cool mechanics, and I might feature some in a later video. Thanks for watching this video about mechanics. I hope you learned something about what cool stuff games are made of, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.